Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third TLC meeting or Teacher Licensure Collaborative meeting of 2023. We are very excited to have you all with us today as we dig into state collaboration and state partnerships on teacher preparation and teacher licensure. I'm going to pull up my screen here. So Teacher Licensure Collaborative is a collaborative of 17 states that are seeking to revise teacher licensure systems, preparation program approval systems to bring them in greater alignment with the science of learning and development. We want to thank our national partners who have been supporting this work, whose expertise and knowledge have made this work possible. And we also want to thank the generous contributions of the following foundations as well to allow this work to happen. What brings us together in the Teacher Licensure Collaborative is a commitment to building whole child systems that reflect our growing knowledge of learning and teaching, and a desire to learn from others and to build on this common work, and a momentum to change the field and build those relationships across state lines and within states that can help build this work for the long term and sustain it. Since the start of the Teacher Licensure Collaborative near the end of 2021, we've seen many waves of different COVID variants, but we've also seen a lot of exciting state work working to bring these systems into reality. And one of the main primary challenges has been tackling teacher shortages, teacher vacancies, and staffing challenges that can often undermine our efforts to build a well-prepared, racially diverse, and sustainable teaching profession. We've seen states build connections and break down silos within agencies, which can often be a challenge, and within and across state lines. We've seen supporting shifts in preparation practice, and we've also seen efforts to revise guidance and standards. And in many cases, part of what drew this group into existence was that state standards for teaching and teacher preparation were more than a decade old in many places and didn't reflect our growing and up-to-date knowledge on how students learn and develop. Through year one and into year two, we've continued these conversations, and in March, we embarked on a conversation more specifically about building data systems and survey instruments to help us track progress and better understand where things around our policy efforts are making movement and where we can continue to grow those efforts. And then also, we've put effort in July into thinking about the proliferation of clinically rich pathways across states and how those are being built to align with the science of learning and development. And we've seen examples from that meeting around grow your own programs in Minnesota, apprenticeship work in Oregon, and residencies in New Mexico. And that brings us to today, where we're going to be talking about kind of a broader look at partnerships and collaboration and the different types of work they can support across states. And we have three exciting examples from three different states, and we're very fortunate to have these states represented and sharing their work. So we're going to start with this panel in just a moment. We're going to get right into it. We will hear from each state. They'll each have a block of time to share a little bit about their work. And then we will shift to a moderated Q&A, and then we will shift into our breakout discussions where audience members will have the chance to speak further with the different states and the different state representatives on the topics they're most interested in, but it will also be a space where we can hear and share more about other state work that we haven't had the space to elevate in this conversation. So we're very excited about those breakout conversations and to continue this work beyond today's work. As always, we will close out and then we will have our optional state team time. So today's focus is how can states partner with the field, whether it's preparation programs, membership organizations, districts, to advance teaching practice that is aligned with the science of learning and development. And we have three wonderful states here to share that work. Now, these are the different organizations, agencies represented in these conversations from each state. I'm going to have them introduce themselves as they're sharing their work, and I'm going to bring them up in just a moment. But we wanted to kind of first give you a lay of the land of what we'll be talking about. We're first going to be hearing from Vermont, who will be sharing an ongoing work around building a teacher portfolio performance assessment and the kind of seeds that's sown for future efforts to revise standards in the state. We're going to hear from Kentucky, who is continuing this conversation around registered teaching apprenticeships and the types of partnerships they've worked to build both at the district and local level, but also at the state level to help seed and support and grow this work across the state. And then we're going to hear about a body of work from Washington State that is fundamentally about standards implementation, but also a deeper reorientation of the relationships that can often exist in states, and how we're hearing state agencies and preparation programs trying to build new collaboration in Washington State. So without further ado, I would like to invite our friends from Vermont to join us and share a little bit about their work, about how they've been building this performance assessment, who the leadership that it took, and some of the history and some of where that work is headed in the next several months and over the course of the years. Vermont, come on up.
Great. Yeah, I can just start. Firstly, just thanks so much. I'm really going to be handing off to my two colleagues here. Quick for myself, I'm Andrew Proughton. I'm with the Vermont Agency of Education. I'm the assistant director of our education quality division, so primarily overseeing licensure and ed preparation. So that my two colleagues here have done amazing work over the past 10 years at least, if not more, in really building an amazing shared portfolio experience for our teacher candidates. So without anything else, I'll turn over to Claudine and David.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about our teacher preparation performance assessment. I'm Claudine Bedell. I'm from St. Michael's College in Colchester, Vermont. So I'm going to give you a little summary of that, the Vermont teacher licensure portfolio. Shortly after the new INTEST standards were published around 2011, we found ourselves at a crossroads in Vermont. We could revise the current homegrown portfolio, we could adopt a national teacher performance assessment, or we could create a brand new portfolio. At the meeting of our Vermont Council of Teacher Educators, our Secretary of Education at the time, Rebecca Holcomb, presented an overview of the need for change, and she encouraged the educator prep programs to take the lead. The VCTE, the Vermont Council of Teacher Educators, gathered and discussed and met with the Vermont Standards Board for Professional Educators to take the secretary up on her offer. The Standards Board gave us a charge, simply put, to research and suggest a national teacher performance assessment or revise or create our own. When we met as an educator prep community, we formulated some proposals. We voted on which one to go forward with and decided on creating our own version of a teacher performance assessment. We spent a year creating backward from the standards and the progressions, which David will tell you more about. We created the assessments first, then the instructions based on our analytical framework of describe, analyze, and reflect. We met monthly over a year, and there were multiple stakeholders in this work. Those stakeholders included the Vermont Standards Board for Professional Educators, the Agency of Education, the Vermont Council of Teacher Educators, as mentioned, that included the educator prep programs in the state and those who wanted to be involved, the State Board of Education, and we consulted with students. As two of the three people, David is the other one of the two, and then Barry Tinkler, the third. We did a lot of the groundwork on the portfolio. We presented, we listened to the community, we participated in the process, we revised and adjusted based on the community's desires, and monthly we brought that work back to the community for more input, feedback, and revision to make more revisions. We conducted quarterly status checks with the Vermont Standards Board and collected feedback to integrate into the work we were doing. At the end of 1 year, we presented the final portfolio in website form that included the common assessment tools, the rubrics, instructions outlining the tasks and the evidence, and a calibration system, as well as an implementation structure. In the end of this year-long process, we delivered a teacher performance assessment with common assessments that offered choice and evidence to demonstrate standards. And now I'm going to turn it over to David to talk about the science of learning and development.
Thanks. I'm David McGough. I'm a professor at Vermont State University and co-director with Claudine of the Educator Preparation Inquiry Collaborative, which is the 501c3 organization that we set up to manage the assessment process, statewide assessment process for the state portfolio. So we do it as an entity that's a third party to the AOE, the Agency of Education, and to the preparation programs. So when we wanted to, when we set up the portfolio, one of the keys was to set up an assessment system that matched the theme of the discipline. So assessment must be germane to the work. Otherwise, the assessment is measuring something which is not of great value. One of the problems with the generic assessment models that are popular around the country is that they're not germane to the actual work. So that was our guiding principle. How do we set something up which actually creates a learning experience that's also an assessment experience for the candidates that will help them learn how to do performance assessment with their own students in the future. So that's the first notion is, we say in education that education is not medicine because students are not patients to be cured. Instead of being preventative and curative, in education, we are developmental and performative. So that's what we wanted to set up as an assessment system. The first step in that is to look at the in-task standards, and the group, whoever set the in-task standards, whoever set them up as a developmental model with a theory of professional development embedded into the performance criteria. So we use that model as a starting point to create this assessment model. So the performance indicators, the learning progressions in the in-task standards are set up as they're set up as 1, 2, and 3, and they demonstrate that an educator can be at any place on those performance levels. You can be a novice educator and be at level 3. You can be a novice and you can be at level 1 or 2. You can be a really experienced educator who's at level 3 and then gets moved to a different place and you return to a novice level because of that new condition that you're in. And the progressions are set up in a circular, recursive fashion for ongoing development. So we wanted to use that process in the development of the portfolio so that students or candidates would have the opportunity to go through a cyclical recursive process and become become more comfortable with the use of self-assessment through the standards and their performance of the standards throughout their program. So that's the first step in the progressions. We set up the portfolio then to be at a novice level, at an entry level into the profession, and then they would start in their professional development in the progressions as they're established by InTask. So that developmentalness is a key to the way we establish the portfolio, and it's generally developmentally built into each of the EPPs. Another is to recognize that education is performative, not preventative. What that means is that we needed a method for conducting the assessment, which was fluid and open and authentic in its nature. It couldn't be objective and removed, like much of statistical sciences. So we adopted Elliot Eisner's connoisseurism and criticism as a method of doing assessment that is best for performance type assessments. And in connoisseurship and criticism, you ask the two questions: what do you see and what can you say that's helpful or growth oriented? And so when we look at portfolios, we use that method. What do I see in this portfolio? And we teach our candidates to use the same method. What do they see when they're in their students' work? And what can you say that's actually formative or developmental? So we use that as scorers of the portfolio and train everybody in the state to use that connoisseurship and criticism approach in the portfolio. And then the candidates experience that as learners, and then they can perform that as educators. So it's in the first place, it's developmental through the progressions. And the second, it's the use of this recursive model with the connoisseurship and criticism. And then it needed to be valid and reliable. So validity, the two principles we established there are that validity and reliability are social constructs. So judgment is required. So that meant that there is no right answer about what you see in a portfolio. So we have to go back and forth with each other and deliberate in an open and inclusive fashion. And that's what we do across the entire state. We pair up EPPs to learn how to do this assessment work. And by doing it across the state, then each EPP or educator preparation program can do it in-house. So that's the next step. We have to learn to use judgment in our assessments, and thus our candidates learn to use judgments and learn to see when they're using judgments and when their biases may be creeping into those judgments openly, and then they can critique themselves in that process. And the fourth principle is validity and reliability are social constructs, and so reality is temporal. So there's two elements there for validity. And the temporalness means that what we call reality or real or assess as quality work changes over time. And an example of that is the nationwide movement towards infusing teacher education with issues of addressing issues of DEIJ right now, and Vermont is facing the same issue. So whereas many educators or educator preparation faculty had been experts in their areas, we now become novices in this area and have to learn how to shift the portfolio and the work that we do in assessment to address something that's new to many people in terms of teacher education preparation. So that temporalness is key because the portfolio had to be flexible enough to meet the needs of each and every educator preparation program, and they're very different from each other. And it also had to be fluid so that it could change over time without necessarily revising the entire process. So those are four principles that we use to help develop the sort of the science of learning and development underneath the assessment model. I think we're up to the next stage.
Well, and Andrew, I want to invite you to speak. Can you speak a little bit about the implications of this great work, this kind of collaboration, this groundswell of interest in building this model? What does that mean? What implications does that hold for the work moving forward in Vermont?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have this process over the past 10 years or so that has been really wonderful. I mean, I actually was able to build a portfolio back during my ed prep, and so as we have more and more educators going through it, really a lot of feedback around just especially those career changers who are going through, who really understand the importance of that self-reflection and connecting to the in-task standards. So now as part of the work that we've been doing through LPI is we want to make sure that if we make any changes within our state to our standards, we don't ruin this process, right? We don't totally throw a wrench in what we already have. So as we're starting to think about making any sort of revisions to our state standards that really include the science of learning, we want to make sure that we are continuing this partnership with the folks on the call with us today, with other partners within the field, and then also bringing in partners who can support us with that DEI lens as well. We have a few organizations within the state that really basically end up they're affinity groups who we're having communications with and getting really great feedback on our processes. So really trying to connect all of these different pieces together, making sure that we aren't just restarting, right? How often do we ruin such a good thing in education by simply restarting? So yeah.
Well, thank you very much, our friends from Vermont. We're going to come back in just a moment, but I want to transfer us a little bit further south now to hear a little bit, to take that thread of holding on to what we already have and using that and leveraging that. I want to bring up our friends from the Bluegrass State who are going to speak a little bit about some of the conditions that supported efforts to build registered apprenticeships, but also kind of work to scale and grow that across the state. And so I wanted to invite our friends from Kentucky to jump in and share a little bit about their journey on the registered teaching apprentice.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura Arnold, Director of Next Generation Schools for the Nelson County Public Schools in Kentucky. And we spent the past several years within our district focusing on how can we find individuals who want to continue to live, work, and grow in Nelson County. And what does it look like to start that at an early age through our high school programs? And then how do we continue to seek models where we can find post-secondary opportunities for individuals in our community who want to get on a teacher certification path. So in Kentucky, we had a great entry point to explore this as we think about opportunities for our students in high school through our tech-ready apprentices for careers in Kentucky, better known as TRAC in our state, and that is our pre-apprenticeship and youth apprenticeship model. This model started in more of our traditional type apprenticeship programs like construction, manufacturing. Then it quickly went into healthcare and IT. And locally, as we started exploring opportunities to prepare young people for the future of education, we saw this as a great way to start thinking about how do we prepare high school students to get into this talent pipeline to want to choose to work in Nelson County schools. So with that, I'm going to transition to Courtney Newton, who will talk a little bit about what this program looks like locally.
Hello, I'm Courtney Newton and Director of Next Gen Learning for 612. And I've also been involved in our Option 7 program, which I'm going to talk to you all a little bit, and the apprenticeship program as well. So really, we're starting with the Option 7 because that's kind of how we got linked into WKU, and we knew some mutual acquaintances through our Option 7 program. So I wanted to give some context for that before moving into the apprenticeship. So in Kentucky, there's lots of different options. Some are easier to navigate than others as far as becoming a teacher and getting into licensure. So locally, we were seeing that we had, of course, some areas that needed to be fulfilled, certain content areas. And we also had population of folks in our community that wanted to be engaged in our schools and maybe had a bachelor's degree in the content area that they were seeking to teach, but maybe this is their second career. So Option 7 was really a spot for those folks who are members of our community that have already had a career, but said, you know, before I did this career, I wanted to be a teacher. So they're coming back to the idea of becoming an educator professional. So I'm going to share my screen. I also dropped the link into the chat should you want to see that. And I wanted to just show a little bit about our apprenticeship. Forgive me if I'm fumbling through Zoom. We don't typically use Zoom. We use Google Meet here often. So with our Option 7 program, it is an initial teacher certification program. We do follow the same rules and guidelines as any other EPP with EPSB. In fact, we're recognized as an EPP in our school district. We're the only school district that's approved to do Option 7. And we've had lots of success with that program as well. So our candidates have to do coursework. They have to do, if they're elementary or special ed, they have 4 courses they take through university in addition to some of our local programs. And I heard Vermont talk a lot about, you know, learning being experiential and being tied to the job that they are doing. And that's one of the benefits that we got through doing Option 7 was that they were learning our language and our culture in our schools, and they were having all those experiences built in. The state of Kentucky also used to have a mentorship program that was built into year 1 of teaching. It was called K-TIP, and that went away several years ago. And so now we have this other need of new teachers needing mentors. So that's a big part of this program as well. So today we have certified 8 teachers since 2021 through Nelson County Public Schools with our Option 7 program, which sounds small, but we are a small district. So that it's big numbers for us. But we're also especially proud of the fact that there have been several special education teachers, math, science, those high need areas in our school districts. And this year we have a cohort that is comprised of about 7 teachers. So we've certified 8. 2 years previous, this cohort, we have 7 that we're certifying. So this really got the attention of WKU, which is why Dr. Kesey is on the Zoom with us as well. So they saw and heard what we were doing with Option 7, and they said, hey, Tennessee is doing this thing with apprenticeship. What do you all think about coming to the table with us to think about what this could look like? So it was a really awesome and true example of post-secondary and a school district coming together to work together hand in hand, create a program and solve an issue that we could see happening in our state, which is how the apprenticeship model came to life. So we have our very first apprentice in the state of Kentucky in Nelson County schools right now. She is teaching 5th grade math. with a excellent teacher in Cox's Creek, and they are essentially in the classroom together all day long. They're in more of a co-teacher type of environment, and she's getting more feedback, more on-the-job experience than I would say any of us probably did in our journey to becoming a teacher and an educator. So she's getting lots of support. She's learning on the job. She's also taking coursework through WKU as well, because there are some things that there's some fundamentals and some, brain development items that she needs to learn about within the coursework as well. So we have a structured program with the apprenticeship. We have one that's currently at Cox's Creek, but then you'll see a picture right below May and Kelsey. You will see a picture of, I think there's 7 students in our education collab that are geared up towards becoming apprentices. So they are in our teacher prep program called the Education Collab. They have lots of classroom time with teachers, learning alongside them. They're actually getting ready to lead their first lessons this Friday in our classrooms. Their school day, half of their school day is inside one of our elementary school buildings, so that they can go right down the hallway to get observation hours, right down the hallway to get mentorship, to teach lessons, etc. So we are truly trying to create a pipeline and a pathway to growth and development from high school all the way through. We even have a partnership with WKU for principal program as well. So we're trying to just provide lots of clarity for folks who want to join education, be excited about the work, and really grow with us. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Kesey, who's been so amazing in this process and really being willing to come to the table with us, because there's not a lot of universities that were willing to do that and kind of be the first. So we always appreciate WKU.
Thank you, Courtney. And we also appreciate Nelson County. I am Sue Kesey. I am the director of the School of Teacher Education. I am also a special education faculty at WKU. And so as we started, we kind of started this grow your own apprenticeship model by meeting with our partners. We started out as a normal school, so teacher education has always been and will continue to be a priority. So we have been very fortunate in having administrators that are very flexible and willing to look at ways to innovate and help support our districts in the teacher shortage. And so when Nelson County came to us and we actually looked at our core curriculum, and there were so many similarities that we thought, this really is a natural partnership. One of our goals as well is to really make teaching a first choice occupation once again. And Nelson County was a perfect partner, because their collab, they start working and pushing or supporting students and from as early as middle school, and to really start thinking about, where do you see yourself? What would you like to do? And so that worked well with us. We were able to look at curriculum and say, what is currently available in this collab where these students spend so many hours in the school? How do we start it as a high school? We had currently already transformed our traditionally face-to-face 8 to 3 program into a high flex, high quality online synchronous, asynchronous program. So we had the foundation built for a grow your own, but then how do we kind of transfer that into an apprenticeship? So we were able to add the competencies that come with the apprenticeship model. We blew up our normal crosswalk to an even bigger crosswalk to say, how are we going to include all the things we need to include our standards, things required for a college degree, and also, kind of look at what's at the high school. We all have a partner with us as well, which is a technical college that's nearby. They have a great system. And so students are able to take their coursework at Nelson County, also at the ECTC, which is our technical college, and then all along with WKU. So they're earning in 3 different locations, but it's all very seamless in a way that we can have students that are ready to enter the teaching profession with, as Courtney said, lots and lots of hours and on the job, ready to go. And so, for us, it's been a priority of getting this started and really looking for innovative ways to support the teacher shortage. And kind of to that approach too, we also went and this summer kind of shared in the summit all the work that we had been doing with Nelson County, and invited all the educator preparation programs in the state, our school districts, community colleges, district partners. We had over 130 people come to the summit and really we're working on. Our goal was not to get them to come to WKU, although we would like that, but also really to kind of say, how do we build and grow the apprenticeship model within the state of Kentucky?
That's fantastic, Sue, and Courtney and Laura as well. I appreciate kind of all of that work, both at the within your institutions, your organizations, but also that state level effort. And taking that thread, particularly about kind of Sue, thinking about that summit and how you tried to you're fostering collaboration with Nelson County Public Schools and building off their work and finding those connection points, and how do you all work together? But also, how do you foster that work at a state level and the collaboration to move the state towards a shared vision for apprenticeships? I think that's something where I'm going to shift us now, and we're going to circle back to all these states to kind of bring some common questions. But I want to turn to Washington State, who's going to talk to us a little bit about a similar effort to move in a shared vision forward in the state. And I'm going to let them talk a little bit about, but I'd like to invite our friends from Washington, Pacific Northwest, to share a little bit about their ongoing efforts to implement CCDEI standards, or diversity, equity, inclusion standards, in the time immemorial curriculum. And I will turn it over to our friends from Washington.
Thank you, Ryan. Hi, everyone. I'm Leonie Sherwin. I am the program director with our educator preparation programs at PESB. We call ourselves PESB, the Professional Educator Standards Board. And I'd like to start off with just a little bit of context. As Ryan mentioned, we are really working on collaborating, and we have our partners here from teacher prep programs as well. But really what happened in recent years, the state had introduced multiple initiatives that required our teacher prep programs to integrate new standards and subjects into their programs, such as our Since Time Immemorial, Tribal Sovereign History curriculum, social emotional learning standards, and then our newly revised CCDEI, our cultural competency, diversity, equity, and inclusion standards. And we also anticipate that there will be more, initiatives coming from the state as well. And so really what happened is all of these initiatives created the need for changes to PESB's approval and review process with our prep programs in order to better align these new requirements with already existing standards. So these changes really emphasize the need for clear policy and guidance around the program standards and around our program approval and review in order to really help facilitate understanding on the part of our educators and our teacher prep programs and other stakeholders as well. So in 2022, PESB brought together a standards approval and review committee, or we call that our SAR committee. And that was composed of, we invited representatives from all of the different educator preparation program types we have in the state, also from districts, our ESDs, and other partners. And the reason we brought this committee together was really to provide input to PESB on the approval and review structures, the implementation of standards, and other preparation related initiatives. So originally, the PESB staff had planned this committee, and we designated focus areas for the committee. But as we really began meeting with our partners, with the committee members, and hearing from them, new ideas for focus areas arose from the members. And Rich would really kind of shift this committee in a new direction. But in the spirit of our CCDI standards and collaboration, which we really were trying to deepen the level of our collaboration, the staff brought those new focus areas to our board. And they agreed that we needed to shift our direction and plans to focus on the topics suggested by the SAR members. So one of those new ideas that came up was a community of practice, which my colleague Jisoo will share with you in just a moment. But I'd like to say that this is really where a deeper level of collaboration was born, I think, between PESB and our educator preparation programs. And that collaboration, that deeper level, is really still in its infancy, but we're hopeful that the collaboration will continue to grow, and along with it, the trust between our agency and preparation programs. So I'd like to turn it over to Jisoo to tell you a little bit more about that community of practice.
Thank you, Leonie. So with the new model of program review process, we really wanted to build a system, not to preparation programs, but with preparation programs. And we wanted to have, because of all these new initiatives like SEL, CCDI standards, as well as since time immemorial, we wanted to have a cushion time before launching the new model of program review so that programs, and also as a state agency staff members, we have time to learn before launching any high stakes measure. And one of the ideas, as Leonie shared, stem from the conversation with our partners and educator preparation program, is the idea of creating the community of practice. So we are trying to have this community of practice initiative in the next 2 years. The community of practice is a group of members that share a common concern, a set of problems, or an interest in the topic. And in the community of practice that we are planning to have, this is an overarching framework that consists of 2 main components. One is the professional learning community, which provide a forum for preparation programs to share their ideas with their peer preparation programs, and and have an opportunity to think about the best practices in their programs. And the other component is the formative review. Both of these components are voluntary, so programs may choose to participate in this series of actions. The PLC, especially, we hope to convene a group of representatives from EPPs together their input and to engage in program and review process, as well as improvement with a focus on equity-centered practices. And we are working with also Learning Policy Institute to develop this PLC as well. With the formative review, this formative review is a process to prepare for the launch of the new preparation program review model centering around equity, diversity, social emotional learning, as well as STI standards, not standards, but STI requirement. And during the formative review, we plan to work collaboratively with the EPP to convene a review team and conduct a virtual site visit. As you can tell from its name, it's a formative review. So although like the program will go through the formal review process, the results is more for learning rather than holding the program accountable for what they have done, because of the nature of like the new initiatives, because we are all learning and we are all implementing the new initiatives together. And one more thing that we those professionals, faculty members who are participating in the review. So we have funding for the representatives who are participating in the PLCs and are participating in the program that are participating in the formative review. And we plan to have this community of practice period for the next 2 years. And then along with this initiative, we also develop the rubrics, program review rubrics together with preparation programs, which Megan can tell you more about.
Thanks, Jisoo. Hello, I'm Megan Kelly Peterson. I'm a teaching professor at the University of Washington, Seattle, where I direct one of our teacher education program pathways. And here I am alongside my colleague, Rachel Oppenheim, from representing the Washington Association Colleges of Teacher Education. WACTE, did I say that right? I think that's our acronym, all of these acronyms, right? I'm the second president-elect of this volunteer organization that tries to bring together opportunities for the varied educator preparation programs across our state to be able to learn with and from each other and to consider the work that we're all trying to do. So PESB so thoughtfully, and as a teacher educator, I appreciate their invitation for educator preparation programs to be a part of the redesign of the formal reviews, that our voices as teacher educators and prep programs could be heard and a part of building the structure in which we can learn about ourselves and improve, and also simultaneously seek continued accreditation inside of the state and to be able to do our work. So alongside with WACD, WACD sent out to all of the individuals and member organizations, institutions across the state, inviting individual faculty to review the drafted rubrics for the new review process. 27 faculty from across different universities are all participating, and we've been organized into 4 smaller groups, looking very particularly at the drafted rubrics, unpacking them, thinking about them together, asking a whole lot of questions. Jisoo and Leonie have had a lot of my questions around my particular group, which I appreciate the opportunity to unpack these indicators, to think about how are we going to show evidence? What does it mean to be meeting expectations versus going beyond or almost there? And what does that look like in terms of the level of work it's going to take for an educator prep program to put together this portfolio for the review process, but also to be a part of the planning around it. And so each small group has been working since August and plans to have these rubrics more formally finalized and drafted with our feedback. We'll be sharing those at the WACD quarterly meeting. We meet as across organizations once a quarter. We meet next week. So each of these groups alongside PESB will be sharing out the work with our full membership to be able to get some more feedback and then finalize again before we submit our revisions to back to PESB. So I think that more work that we're trying to do and engagement together, thinking about some of these partnerships. I'm going to turn it back to Leonie.
Sorry, I had to get myself unmuted. Thank you, Megan. So a couple other areas I think we wanted to share about real quick was another area of collaboration with WACD and our educator preparation programs is around our social emotional learning standards and also our since time immemorial curriculum that I mentioned previously. And basically for the past couple of years, PESB staff have been meeting with representatives from teacher and principal preparation programs to collaborate on these 2 initiatives. And so alongside teacher prep program reps and others, we facilitate and serve on a subcommittee of our state social emotional learning advisory committee, and also a since time immemorial educator prep program team. And both teams, really the goal is to provide guidance and support to teacher and principal prep programs around integrating the CEL standards and the STI curriculum. So WACD has generously agreed to allow time on their agenda at every quarterly meeting for our teams to provide updates and presentations and engage programs in discussing best practices and continued support needed. So we've been really thankful for that. Some of the things the CEL subcommittee has done is published implementation briefs, held a book study with WACD members, and joined several teacher prep program representatives in a year-long Teacher Educator Institute with Nancy Markowitz and her staff around her book, Teaching with a Social, Emotional, and Cultural Lens. And then at WACD's October conference, we're going to be sharing some of this learning and discuss with them what other supports would be helpful in the future. Also, our STI group is going to be meeting, presenting at the WACD conference in October as well. And we've provided resources and guidance on the website, developed a newsletter for teacher prep programs, as well as presenting and engaging with teacher prep programs during WACD to just really share about best practices, how different programs are integrating the STI curriculum. And we're planning discussions about STI conference and learning circles for the next year. So we're really excited about the work and really thankful for all of the prep programs that are working with us and for WACD to allow us time as well. And I think Rachel is going to share also about one last collaborative project that we're working on together.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And I kind of want to do a little bit of a backing up and taking a bird's eye view and a little bit of a historical perspective, which is our two agencies or organizations, PESB and WACD, have had some tensions in the past, and had like a maybe contentious relationship in the past, in part because PESB is our accrediting body, right? So there's this sort of gatekeeper relationship in some ways between PESB and WACD, who represents, all of the colleges or all of the teacher preparation programs in the state. And so everything that you've just heard is like deliberate movement toward more collaboration and toward recognizing like, hey, we're in this together. We actually have these common goals of having the best prepared teachers we can in our state and the best educated students, and diversifying the educator workforce and sustaining, teachers of color in our communities. Like, these are things that we actually, goals that we have in common. And so we should be working together as opposed to sort of having a little bit of an antagonistic relationship. And so, you see the four of us, but the four of us represent a lot of people who have been working really hard to collaborate and to understand our common goals. So I'll just really quickly, because we're probably out of time, I haven't been timing us, talk about the Advancing Equity grants, which one area that we realized over the past several years our two organizations have in common is our commitment to equity, to supporting communities farthest from justice, farthest from educational justice specifically. And PESB has, but in addition to being an accrediting body, is also a granting agency. And so they created an Advancing Equity grant to support institutions of higher ed, support teacher preparation programs, to develop initiatives that they think would advance equity both in their own programs and beyond, right? And to hopefully sort of like, that with that grant money and with that community, come up with ideas for what advancing equity looks like in our education programs and in our state that would inspire other people and other programs. So I want to say there were kind of 3 rounds of Advancing Equity grants. Erica's here somewhere. She could correct me if I'm wrong. And just a lot of really wonderful initiatives came out of that, and a lot of collaboration came out of those grants. So I think I'll stop there because, again, I think we're probably over time.
Well, and this is great. And I want to, as I talk a little bit to kind of transition here, I'd like to invite all of our state panelists from Vermont and Kentucky to also come on, and we'll try to spotlight you so you're all on the same panel here. But something I just want to flag is one key thing that I'm hearing in Washington is there are layers, right? Like, I was going to ask about context of relationships, right? What's the history that brought us to this point, and how are you addressing that? And you spoke to that in just the past few minutes here, and how there are a lot of different touch points for relationships to be fostered and to kind of rebuild or establish trust in a way that can help kind of grow this over time. And so I'm struck by just the myriad of ways, whether it's book studies, let's review this together, it's transparency from PESB, and its willingness from the from WACD and institution side to kind of assume best intentions, right? Come to the table, let's see how this plays out type thing. And so I think that's a really powerful example, both of SEA preparation program reorienting each other to collaborating, but also I hear some of preparation programs reorienting to collaborate a little bit more together, right? And both under a membership banner. And so I want to open it up to other states here. I'd be curious from our friends in Kentucky and our friends in friends in Kentucky and our friends in Vermont. Could you speak a little bit to some of the possible challenges you may have encountered to foster some of this collaboration, whether it was how do you get everyone onto the same page to want to build this performance assessment and to move forward on that, which could have a lot of pitfalls. And also, how do you get people willing, Sue, to your point, to work together when sometimes you are competing for, you may feel like you're competing for this finite resource, which is our wonderful candidates who will be wonderful teachers. So let's start with Vermont. I'd be curious how you all, the history there, how you kind of brought initiated or really kind of made that kind of stick? I know you had the impetus from the, your task with doing this, but curious how that played out.
Claudine, can you speak to that?
Sure. In Vermont, we are a small state. That is helpful to start. And we wanted to make that point today that you can take this to scale. It's like, instead of just Vermont being a small state, it can be regional collaborations that get together to create something for an entire larger state. So if you think of us as a region within your bigger states, that regional work or a small state's work, you can reach out to people pretty easily. We have similar goals in mind, similar intent, similar positive attitudes toward education. We all want the best for our students in the K-12 system, and for our teacher prep program to produce the best teachers for our students. And so with a similar goal in mind, we just constantly opened the door and encouraged people to attend and ask for representation from every committee that oversees education in Vermont. And people were willing to be present, and the work was important enough, and people walk through the door, and it became part of the work. And the debates and the work itself was interesting and engaging, and affected their work. So everybody had stake in, they were true stakeholders in the work. So for example, the portfolio is our ROPA approvals, which is, results-oriented program approval process in our state. For every educator preparation program has to go through this ROPA process in our state. And that is it's a committee of our Vermont Standards Board. It oversees that. And the AOE is involved in that, in the Vermont Standards Board as well, and in the process of the Vermont Standards Board. So everybody, it's intertwined. All the work of these different committees are intertwined, so they all see a stake in the work itself.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I'll just add one key and interesting point in the realm of leadership and policy change. There's a statement that there are leadership moments. That is opportunities when a window of opportunity opens and you have to jump through it. And at the key moment, at the beginning of this particular process, as Claudine said, we have a long history of collaboration. There's been contention in the past between the educator prep programs and the governing body as well, and the Agency of Education. But at a key moment, at a key meeting, when the decision had to be made about how to proceed with the state portfolio, either a national generic model or a homegrown model, we actually had a Secretary of Education who visited the meeting and turned back to all of us as a collective set of enterprises and said, why don't you do it together? In that moment, that opened an opportunity, that opened this window of opportunity to say, okay, an authority figure has said that we should try doing this together. And we jumped through that window. It wasn't easy, but we had to pull some people through that opportunity window. But that key moment really is, we've looked for those throughout the process. Here's a key moment, here's a key moment. And if you can find those and look at them, there are opportunities to bring people together. We found that to be an advantage.
Yeah, that's even better than what I was going to say, David. But generally coming from the state agency, if I want my partners to trust me, I need to trust them, right? So I know there are times where we need to focus on accountability, but really I think we are at this moment in our educational history where, for the past 25 years, we've been focused on accountability, and look at where we are. So it's really important for us to really have a change of pace and think of, and just trust the experts, right? I know that when I get a call from one of my EPPs, and while we are small, we do have 14 different EPPs in our state, very, very different programs. But when I get a call from one of them and they have a candidate who's struggling with testing or something, I always I know that the reason why they're calling me is because they know that they're a good teacher, right? That they have someone that they really believe will make the lives of students better. and there's just some barrier that's in the place that we put in place because of this idea of accountability and a place of distrust. So really working and trying to rebuild those relationships in that way by there's some give and take. And I think that I would like to think at least that I'm at a point now that, since that is how I've been operating, I get emails from our ed preps and they feel comfortable reaching out to me and having these conversations in these situations. So.
And I'd be curious, from Sue and Laura and Courtney, if you're still there, like how for you all, when it comes to your collaboration with this, I know you have your specific partnership that's focused on your model, and I'd be curious of any challenges you had to navigate, because I'm sure you're both very busy with many things other than just how do you get together and sort through the details. But also your relationship with the state, anything that you all have kind of done to facilitate that or navigate that. Would be curious what other things happening on your end.
Well, I think from a state perspective, I think from at least an educator preparation standpoint, the teacher crisis has really brought all of the EPPs together, because we know it's going to take all of us together to make a difference. And so, like with the summit, when we were first like, why would you invite your competitors to a meeting? And it was basically, here's everything we've done, our mistakes, our triumphs, and learn from us mistakes or whatever, and develop programs too, because we know we can't do it by ourselves. And we know that without good teachers, we're not going to have strong college students in 20 years. And so the whole idea that we really need to really partner and to make sure that everyone realizes the importance that educator preparation programs brings to the table. And I think that's part of it as well. We have in Kentucky, we have 9 different ways to become teacher certified. And so we want to make sure that the educator preparation programs at the universities maintain their role in really being the main educators and the supporters, and the idea of being able to work with partners and working together. And that's the beauty of with our work with Nelson County, that we can really say, instead of us getting 200 hours, which we had more than that, but 200 hours are required just before student teaching, our apprentices are getting more than 2,000 hours. And so it's a whole different model. And really, how do we work together? And if we want to state support, and we want kind of the autonomy that we need to really work together to figure out how to be the problem solvers. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Well, I appreciate all of that. And I also just want to name our friends from the University of Washington and Western Kentucky are also very collaborative in sharing at the national level as they participate in our Educator Preparation Laboratory Initiative, which is another way for this work to seed and be shared across other spaces. Right now, I want to shift us to thinking about, we're going to move into small groups. We want to continue. Thank you very much for joining us today. For those of you who are able to be in the breakouts, we will send around some updates via email on next steps with the Teacher Licensure Collaborative and what we are thinking for a year 3 and some of the topics that we hope to dig into next year. And we also want to elevate, we will be sending around information for the January 23rd Ed Prep Labs annual policy summit this next year. Will be the first event that will be kind of supporting, which will look a lot at leadership preparation and development and school leaders, and kind of put a little bit more of a spotlight on that work with so much recent research out there that we want to make sure we're elevating the work of school leaders because of the implications for teachers and their own working conditions. If any ideas for topics that you have not heard discussed that you think we should be digging into and featuring in these types of discussions, please send them to Julie or myself. We are very grateful for any and all time that you all were able to give to this conversation. And we look forward to hearing more about this great state work as it progresses. And we hope that we get to connect with you all further in the new year. Thank you all very much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and rest of your day. Bye, everyone.